Our product here is the steam pasteurizing equipment. It consists of a steam generator, an aeration unit, and a steam cart. You'll be able to see each of these features as we look at them individually to show you how the whole system works. The steam cart is one of several methods that you can use for steaming. Many growers use a bench maybe 5 feet wide and 35 feet long, and with a tarp, as you see on here, it's possible to cover the bench and apply the steam from the steam generator. When we developed the system with the University of Connecticut about 15 to 20 years ago, Dr. Aldrich and Dr. John Bartok all suggested that we go with a 2-yard cart. The 2-yard cart is built around the features of a perforated floor, and you may have a side that is openable from either side so that you can use it for potting, or you have the 2 cubic yards of soil, and an alternate method of use with a hydraulic system is also available from Sebring. We use this system because it is versatile, and we use it because any grower can make his system adapt to this particular process. You do not need the cart, however, but in our system we use a stipulated size of cart so we can control the amount of air and steam, and by doing so we're able to allow you about an hour and a half of steam time. An hour and a half for most mixes will bring the system up to a temperature of about 170 degrees. This varies with the temperature of the media when you begin, and it depends on your adjustments on the steam process as well as on the aeration blower, which we will cover later. Your method of steaming can be adapted, and we are trying to introduce old technology for new solutions. The solution you had of the methyl bromide, which is now on a sunset of probably about 2005, gives this the opportunity to control nematodes, seeds, and other kind of foreign material that you want to pasteurize in your media. Our potting media that we would do through here, when it is completed, will achieve a certain amount of moisture, but then during the dry down and cool down process, the whole process is brought into complete ready to pot soil after the cycle is over. The floor is movable, and it's possible that you will need to clean out the floor or wash it down if the media that you're using will gum up the holes in the process. It's important to note that when the floor is in place and you're loading the media, sometimes if you're dumping the media in the center, what happens is the corners build up steam pipes or they build up chimneys, and they allow the air to pass up through these chimneys and pass under the canvas, but don't get directed to the media that you're looking for. So it's very important that you pack and compress evenly, and it isn't how hard you compress it, but it's how even you compress it that determines the efficiency of the steaming process. A power vehicle can be used for moving the trailer. The trailer will weigh somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 pounds when it's loaded. Right now it has a tongue on the front that the small vehicle can pull, and it uses a hitch pin, and you'll notice that it does turn very short and that you can make sharp turns with the unit to navigate in your greenhouse process. The steering on any cart is very important. We have chosen the auto steer or use of a tie rod instead of a center pivot. When we do this, the feature gives you the stability of the cart as well as adequate steering, but it does not make the cart tippy as a center pivot would. The outside diameter of the tire is 18 inches. You'll notice the width of the tire is almost 8 inches wide. The purpose of this is to give you the ability to move in soft soil that is often surrounding greenhouses. We prefer you to use the concrete as a place to work, but if you have to be outdoors, this gives you some flexibility. It should be noted that you can use the cart, but does not contain high-speed axles on it so that you wouldn't pull it down the road at 30 miles an hour. We recommend a 10 to 15 mile an hour speed for transport. The chain that you'll notice on the trailer is made so that the rear end of the trailer will flex. If we had the box and the trailer solidly attached to each other, what would happen during transport over uneven ground is that the wheels would come off the ground and you would have an inappropriate function of the trailer. So we've tried to give you some flexibility to accommodate slightly uneven terrain. The cart has several features that you should be aware of. The tarp strap seems inadequate, but it is very important because when we turn the aeration blower on, before we used this high quality of tarp for the steaming process, we had dirt on the ceiling. This was during the experimental phase, and we had dirt literally blown straight out of the cart and up to the ceiling because of the power of the aeration blower. Retention for the cart tarp is very important. This tarp is made out of the same kind of material that semis use for covering grain. I've had people use this in their greenhouses for actually steaming the soil beds, and they found that it stands up 3 and 4 times longer than anything else they had on the market. You'll notice 2 other features. One is that there is a plug for draining. Every time you steam, there will be condensation. So you can either use the drain plug, or we furnish a quarter-turn valve which will give you the opportunity of draining your excess condensate into a bucket. As you'll notice, we have furnished a drain. There's one on either end. The one beneath the cart for complete draining is featuring a quarter-turn valve, and with the quarter-turn valve you're able to remove the condensate and direct it into a bucket or other drain facility to give you control of the water so it isn't in your way and all over the floor. The aeration blower is fabricated by Sebring Manufacturing with conjunction of a buffalo blower on a cart that we've designed to give you full flexibility. You will notice that there is one very important feature on the aeration blower. There is a shutter, and this shutter is made so that you can either increase or decrease the amount of air going through the blower. You'll notice that there is a small hole in the center. We recommend that when you start the process, you leave the shutter almost completely closed. This gives just a slight amount of air and does not dilute the steam process, which is otherwise going to be robbed of the BTUs necessary for the media heating by having to heat cold air. We'd like to see you leave the blower not in operation for at least 4 or 5 minutes to allow the bottom of the steam trailer to be preheated, and then with the shutter closed, turn on the aeration blower and your steam process should begin. The third component in any steam process is a steam source. What we're looking at is a high-pressure steam generator. This is not to be construed as a boiler. There is no boiler feature to it. Coils are used, and the water passes through the coils and remains in the coils, and it's generated into steam at the tail end of the coils, and the separation process is all done within this unit. If you have 15-pound steam, you have a cooler temperature of steam delivered into your media and possibly will require a longer period of time in order to do the soil transfer of heat to generate the pasteurizing process. Here we're looking at a steam generator. It will usually generate in about 2.5 minutes maximum. And this will give you what we call an instant steam. Normally a vessel type boiler will require as much as 20 minutes. The steam generator is made so that you're able to use it in quite simple fashion. It's a very straightforward machine, and it has a number of features that we'd like to point out to you. We recommend that you use a 3/4 inch or larger water hose to perform the task of bringing water into the machine. It has to require a constant flow of water at approximately 40 to 45 psi. We have a gauge that will show you to control this, but some water systems fluctuate, and this will cause a change in the performance of the machine. We were looking at the machine in such fashion that we want to demonstrate to you how the water passes through the machine and the various controls and features that it will encounter to prepare it to be used as steam in your media. The first feature we'd like to show you is the clear wave water conditioner. This sounds like a little magic, but it is actually a very important device. It changes the ion structure of the water and allows it to pass through the machine instead of collecting. We've had illustrations of when we've had up to 470 parts per million of lime in the water, and the improvement that this has made has been significant. While some of the testing labs don't recommend this, we have found it through field experience to be a very important feature on our machine. The next thing that you will encounter, the water goes through a screen and a strainer. And sometimes it's important to clean the strainer just in order to prevent the plugging of the screen. If you have any kind of debris from pond water or anything of this nature, you'll undoubtedly plug up the screen. There is a gauge, which we'll show you in a moment, and the gauge gives you the incoming water pressure. The gauge is showing a 200-pound pressure capacity. We don't want you to use more than about 45 pounds of water pressure to give you the right amount of water for the efficient operation of a coil-type steam generator. The flow switch is an important part of the steam generator. It controls the amount of water in the sense that if the water is not passing at an adequate rate, the burner will not operate. It's very important for the safety of a steam generating system such as this to make sure that the water flow is even and that the burner operates only when there is water in the coil. The flow control is a water income regulator, but it doesn't always work as adequately as it should. You will note that the flow control is adjusted to about 1 gallon and 1.1 gallons per minute. The water next goes into a 200-pound capacity pump. The purpose of the pump is that it gives you a water pressure in order to keep pushing the water as the steam pressure builds. When the steam pressure builds, it's actually possible to drive the steam back through the pump. If the pump fails, or if the steam comes back through the pump, it can damage the pump vanes and cause them to become inoperative. There is a check valve, and the check valve prevents the water from backflowing into the pump in its hottest form. You'll notice that there is a copper tube, and the copper tube is taking the water pressure out of and measuring the water pressure out of the pump itself as it's being pushed into the cold side of the coil. There are two basic coils inside of this machine. The first coil is made with an outside wrap on the outside of the tank. Cold water pushed into that wrap gives you a preheating. Then it passes into a center coil where the actual steam process is completed. At that point, the steam comes back through the copper tube and into a steam separator tank. The water comes and the steam comes into the tank, and the tank separates the water through a process that is contained inside this tank. The pressure regulator, or the steam gauge, takes its pressure off the top of the tank. The steam separator tank is a very important part of separating the moisture and collecting the water and measuring the amount of steam pressure that is being delivered to your steam system. The steam is discharged through a secondary source and into a water separator. The water separator is made with a bell, and as that bell fills with water, the air causes the water to dump into an overflow. The steam is separated in the steam separator tank and passes a sensor. The sensor gives you an idea of how hot the water and steam is, but if the steam reaches a point, or if the heat coming out of the pot reaches a point in excess of 300 degrees, it will shut down the burner. What this indicates is that there is a restriction in the water flow through the system, and that the superheated air in the dry coils will generate temperatures up to 400 degrees. Now, in order to start the machine, water flow begins over here and should be controlled with some sort of a valve. As you turn the valve, you will regulate the water pressure, and as you regulate the water pressure, you begin the steam process. When the coil is filled with water and coming out of the bypass, there is a three-way valve, and the three-way valve gives you the ability to control water out of the overflow or out of the steam line, so that you're able to control the amount of water going into the steam line prior to full head of steam. The burner is a standard furnace burner. It's made by the #1 burner producer in the United States, R.W. Beckett Company. The burner is designed specially for this machine, and it runs at 100 psi. The 100 psi is required, and we recommend that you adjust the pressure, which we'll demonstrate later on the function of the burner. Simply to say, the burner is then producing the heat. We use a #2 heating fuel, and we do not recommend kerosene, as damage will occur to the pump of the burner. The aeration, or the air system, on the burner will be explained, and all the functional parts of the burner will be explained at the end of this video. The important thing in operating of the steam generator is to know several basic principles. #1, never operate the steam generator without a flow of water. You'll notice that the water flow is at about 45 psi. The second thing you can do then is notice that there is a simple switch. It's a rotary switch, and by turning on the pump, you will allow the water to be pushed through the coil and out through the steam hose. When you find that the water has flowed out of the steam hose, you are then ready to turn on the burner, and you simply pass the pump stage onto the burner, and both the pump and the burner will operate. Notice there is a pause in the burner. It runs at a 60-pound pressure during the beginning 30 seconds of operation, but with an electric solenoid valve on the pump, it does not have oil pumping until there is ignition, and at that point, the burner is ready to fire and give you heat. You'll notice that at turn on of the burner, there is a pause. There's a pause, and then the pump begins, and the pump operates at a few seconds at 60 psi oil pressure. After there is spark ignition, then when that has been determined by the primary control, the burner will spring into operation and your steaming process begins. You'll notice a slight glow in the inside of the heat coil. This is the flame contacting the coil. You're discharging the same amount of gas fumes or fumes of combustion that you would in any furnace. It's important, if you wish, to make sure that you control these fumes in the greenhouse. There will be no smoke after the paint and things have been burned down to where they'll be no longer damaged. But you'll notice the water coming out of the bypass. The bypass valve is open, and so all the water is coming out of the bypass valve. But notice that we do recommend that you put a chimney on the heat exchanger, and that would take an 8-inch chimney. Now you'll notice that since the beginning, which is less than a minute, you're getting interrupted water, which is generating steam. After all of the steam has been removed from the water supply, then there'll be only a very small amount passing each moment. At that point, you'll turn over the steam handle, and you'll note that there is some water that will be discharged, and then you'll get a head of steam. And within a minute now, the steam should be very, very well dried up, and you should have virtually no water coming out of the hose. There are two types of orifices, a small and a large. This orifice goes in the coupling that is attached to the trailer. The importance of this is to keep the steam pressure building in the hose and only discharging at the point that the steam comes into the trailer. The purpose of this is to prevent condensation in the steam line and to deliver all of the heat, because the heat will not be given off from the steam until the pressure drop occurs. So we don't want any pressure drop in the hose, and we don't want any heat dissipated to speak of until we get into our media. This is the purpose of the restrictor. Often the novice does not use this and finds that he cannot generate steam. There is a swivel coupling, and the swivel coupling is used to attach to the hose. This is for the operator convenience. You'll note that the hose for the delivery of the steam is adjacent to the air intake hose. The purpose of this is there is a curved pipe inside of the trailer, and it allows the steam to be injected directly into the airstream coming from your blower. This is probably the most important part of operating your steam generator. You will never get it to function correctly if you do not have 9 pounds of water per minute. We have a mark on the bucket, and we suggest that until you get used to the steam generator and know that you have the water incoming pressure correct and the amount of flow through the machine correct, you will never develop a nice dry steam. Most often, if we talk you through it over the phone, we have to insist that you measure the amount of water, and this should be 9 pounds by weight. You'll notice we've taken a bucket, put a small mark on it, and we recommend you do the same thing. Remember, the bucket weighs something, so don't count the bucket weight in the water. Depending on the lime content of your water, you will be able to establish over a short period of time how much time lapse you're able to steam. We have found that usually once every several weeks, or maybe every 40 or 30 hours, will give you a good gauge to start with. You'll notice that the pressure on the gauge on the steam will increase significantly, up to maybe 80, 90, or 100 pounds. This is usually a sign that there is a lime buildup occurring in the coils. Taking the simple bucket and the hose that is furnished, you'll be able to use an acid solution to de-lime. Specific instructions are included in the written material accompanying the machine. If you wish to store the machine in a freezing location, make sure you remember one simple fact. Water freezes at 32 degrees, whether it's in a machine or out in a pond. You'll be able to note that you will have a very disappointing experience if you freeze the coil. It can be an expensive experience to remove the coil, and it's caused by freezing. Breaking the coil can be prevented by simply blowing down the water that's within the coil, or taking the hose that you use for de-liming and injecting some windshield washer fluid. This will give you the freeze protection. but there is approximately 3 gallons of water in the coil. So you need to blow the water out with the feature that is given here as an air valve that attaches to the water hose connection. As you look at the primary control, which we see here, this is the brain of the burner. The thermostatic control tells the burner when to operate. For instance, if you let the burner run without fuel, the red light will come off, the red button will come out, and you'll see that the red light is out. There is no flame, and you have a need to reset the button. Older relays required only a simple depression of the button. This relay requires 30 seconds of depressing. If you're operating the machine, it is important to keep the fuel pressure at 105 pounds. If the fuel pressure is changed, more fuel will be added if you're over 105 pounds, less fuel will be added if you're under 105 pounds. To adjust the pressure on the burner to give slightly more oil or slightly larger flame, the oil pressure adjustment is here. By simply turning a screw counterclockwise, reduces the pressure, clockwise increases the pressure. The air band is your most critical adjustment on the machine. If you have too much air, the flame will be short and cool. If you do not have enough air, the flame will be long and smoky. What we're looking at here is the shutter, and the shutter and band are two separate adjustments. The air band is the major adjustment. A slight adjustment of 1/4 or 1/8 of an inch will change the efficiency on the burner as much as 4 points. It's important that you use the shutter, which is the finger pointer, if you use the shutter as the final fine adjustment on your flame. We usually have predetermined numbers that we can help you with over the phone to determine the appropriate setting for your shutter.